Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad you could join us for today. One of the first times we've actually tried to do this here. We thought we're all home. What the heck? Let's try and get everybody on camera all at once. So we thought we'd start a new section here on our YouTube page. We're going to start to call it Conversations, where we sit down and we talk with some of our ambassador and photographer contributors and kind of get their perspective on what they're working on, how they get there, that kind of information. And that's what we want to bring to you. And we thought, what better way to kick this off than to invite all of our ZEISS ambassadors or those that could join us this afternoon and have a full room conversation. And here they are. Welcome, everybody. To your on the screen in the upper left is Amy Cyphers. She is a Sony shooter, uses all the baddest line of lenses. You've got me in the middle. I'm there. My name is Tony. I am the senior marketing manager for ZEISS Camera Lenses, both in the photo and cinematic side of the house. On the upper right is Tracy Page. She is also a Sony shooter, but she's got a little trick up her sleeve to tell you about the Otis lenses. So we're going to get to hear from that today. Bottom right is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Greg Watermann. He is a rock photographer with an awesome background in history. He's got lots of things to talk to us about, some projects he's working on right now. Lower in the middle is Kenneth Mr. Professor Hines. He is also a Sony shooter located in the South in Atlanta. He does a lot of street shooting as well as weddings and other events. Where we're going to get some interesting information from him. And then on the lower left, last but certainly not least, is Kim Bear. She has a particular niche that I find rather interesting, and I think you will too. She does a lot of lay flats and that kind of still life imagery. It's really excellent. I will also tell you there might be a place where you could be able to see her coming up soon. Take a look for that 8-page layout that she's got coming. Shh, don't tell anybody. So, welcome, crew. Go ahead and say hi to the folks at home.
Hey guys.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
So we thought we'd have a small conversation
Hello,
here.
YouTube.
Sorry, I'm a little excited. I'm jumping over lines here. My apologies. So I thought we'd get together and we'd talk to everybody. We'd have a conversation, go around the room, have everybody introduce themselves, give you a little bit more in depth about what's going on in their lives, what kinds of things they shoot, and how they're keeping themselves busy. So without further ado, I'd like to start. Let's start in the upper left with Amy. Amy, why don't you give us a little bit of information about yourself?
Hi, I'm Amy Cyphers. I live in Northeast Kansas on a farm on acreage. So, it's been nice to be home so much with my family. I have 3 kids that I'm constantly chasing around to various sports activities. So all of that has halted, and we've had a lot more time just to enjoy each other at home. I'm a family and kids photographer and also photography educator with the Wild Child Photography and Kim Bear, who you see, I don't know if I'm pointing at her right, but down there. We shoot together a lot. I'm also, what's been keeping me busy a lot here is my bees. I'm a beekeeper and I've been out working the bees a lot. So that's been a lot of fun, and I do like to photograph them. And there's something really calming about checking hives and being surrounded by 50,000 stinging insects. So
Wow.
I enjoy that a lot. Yeah.
But they keep you buzzing, as it were.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll be here all evening. Hey, Tracy, let's hear from you. How's things going down your way?
Things are going good, a little slow. I'm an entertainment and editorial portrait photographer. I work out of Atlanta, Georgia. I live closer to Florida. I'm just an hour or 2 hours from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm missing my clients. The entertainment industry is completely shut down right now. We were one of the first industries, and Greg knows this, to shut down. And they're talking about using sound stages as hospitals right now. So we're just, I know when it all comes back, we're all going to come back and with a vengeance because we are the content providers. So, I feel like everybody's binge watching right now, so they need content. So our business will be back. But in the meantime, I'm down. So I'm taking the opportunity to learn a new camera system. So this has been my vacation, our COVID moment, learning how to go from Nikon to Sony. So
That's excellent. We're definitely going to want to hear about that. And thank you for that. Hey, Greg, you're up next.
Unmute yourself, Greg.
Greg, you turned your audio off.
He's fixing it.
There we go.
Awesome.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Take two.
I'm the one who's still figuring everything out. Anyway, hi everyone, I'm Greg Watermann. I've been using ZEISS lenses for over 30 years, so they're part of who I am and what I do. So that's my primary purpose and reason for being here in the first place. I'm in Miami Beach right now. One of my main clients, Pitbull, the rapper from Miami, is still keeping me busy. We've got projects going on. I'm always having to pull things out of his archive to service other media content needs. And right now we're working on a video that we've got people submitting, fans submitting clips of them dancing to his song. We're going to make this massive thing. I can't really talk about it much more than that, but it's going to be cool. But that's coming up soon.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. We'll definitely want to hear about that if we can. Thank you for that. Hey, Kenneth, you're up next.
Hello, I'm Professor Hines, as most people know me online for. I'm kind of keeping myself busy here in Atlanta by doing several new educational online tutorials. Mostly has been on editing in Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop, as well as still doing my Q&A on my Instagram, answering people's public questions, helping them with their camera systems, editing, whatever it may be. And also running my online store where I sell my prints, have my Adobe presets that work for Lightroom and Camera Raw. So for me, going through this whole pandemic, it's not really been, it hasn't really hit what I do just because of how my business is structured. But it's shifted everything to an online presence more so to where I don't have to worry about the footwork and travel. So that's actually been, as an introvert like myself, that has been the best part. I don't have to worry about going through TSA. So I love that.
Definitely. Yeah. No, we could all use a little bit less of that. Although I will say that it's been really a challenge from our side not being able to travel and see everybody up front. But hey, thanks
That's
for
true.
that, Ken. And Kim, who we haven't seen since September, actually. Back when we were out in New York. So, Kim, give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Well, I live in the same town that Amy does, and so we work together with the Wild Child, which has obviously been put on halt. Everyone in our town is doing really good about trying to stay away and just in their own place. So that part of shooting families and kids has been very slow, if not all gone. So we hope that comes back this summer and fall. But kind of like Kenneth, my world revolves around me kind of alone in a studio shooting things. So that hasn't changed. I'm still shooting all sorts of things, and especially as spring is coming up and as new things are growing, it's been nice just to kind of work in my garden and grow things and then get to photograph them. So I've enjoyed that part of just kind of being home and baking more, and which serves all the things that I get to photograph. So, yeah.
Awesome. So really being at home hasn't changed you at one bit.
Not much.
Great. So I want to thank everybody for being here again. One of the things as I look around the room is I hadn't realized that, hey, we're all Sony shooters now. And some of you are current converts. Some of you have been on the Sony train for a long time.
From the beginning, from the very
beginning.
first full frame mirrorless camera they made.
Awesome. Greg, why don't we go to you? Why don't you tell us why you choose to use the format you use, and then why you like to pair those with the ZEISS glass?
Yeah, so I'm a still photographer. I shoot music, but I also do a lot of video work, which now to that point is 50-50. Half of everything that I shoot is video content, even though I'm just the photographer there. And the primary reason that I switched to mirrorless was because of the electronic viewfinder. If you haven't looked through one of those yet, you really need to try one now. I was looking at them from the beginning, 10, 15 years ago, and they were always terrible. There wasn't enough information. You just felt like you were looking at a low-res TV screen. How could you make accurate judgments on exposure, critical things like focus? color correction while you're shooting, etc. You weren't able to do that before, but now you can. The electronic viewfinders are so amazing. And if you're shooting video, going back and forth from photo to video, without having to even take your eye away from the viewfinder camera, not having to look at the screen, being able to shoot in intimate situations, that was the primary reason that I switched to that set of cameras. The quality then that inherently came after that is coming in leaps and bounds all the way to the focus system now, which is the focusing system now is so good that it got me to switch to autofocus. I was using ZEISS manual lenses, both the Otis with adapters and the Loxias on the Sony cameras. But then once the bodice came out and there was a full line, like, okay, I've got 5 primes now, I can shoot anything that I need. And now I'm an autofocus shooter, so it's the perfect combination.
Awesome. That's great to hear. One of the questions that just kind of popped up, and Tracy snuck into the chat there, but it was a question about favorite lens for portrait, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy on this one, because I kind of know the way you're going to answer, but I want to hear it from you. What's your favorite focal length for the heirloom and family portraits that you and Kim do?
I'm curious how you think I'm going to answer. I said recently, like, picking a favorite bodice lens is like picking one of my favorite, like, what child is my favorite. I love them all for different reasons, but for portrait work, I do really love the 135.
Nice.
It's just an amazing lens. It's so sharp and beautiful, and I just know when I take it out, I'm gonna love what I come in with. So that's, I don't know, that's my favorite for portrait work for sure.
Excellent. Excellent. And I'm gonna go to my right here, Tracy. I know you have a little bit of a twist on a favorite focal length and lens combination. You also are a recent convert to Sony, yes?
Yes, and so a friend of mine writes for Professional Photographer magazine, and he was doing a review of the Sony, the A7R4, and so I have had previously had a Sony, and it wasn't just quite there for me, but on the A7R4, as soon as I put the Otis lens on it, I manually do everything because I'm just a control freak, but I could immediately see the focus, the peaking, and it was just so clear and so easy. It took me, I would have thought I was autofocusing. It was so fast. So that made me invest in the Sony, and I'm only a few weeks into it. And of course, you know, having no clients, you guys are seeing lots of pictures of the birds and flowers and trees around my house as I go learn my new camera system. But I am completely amazed. So, and to answer, I think somebody asked about what our favorite focal lengths are. Mine is the 100 Otis, and this stays on my camera about 95% of the time. I do like the 55 Otis. I tend to use that a lot as well. I've not used the 85 as much since I switched over to the 100. And so now going from Nikon, I was a D850 shooter. I mean, I'm all my whole career with Nikon. So going from Nikon to Sony, I'm using a Sigma, I think it's an MC11 converter. And that seems to get that digital signal more quickly from the lens to the focus peaking so that I can respond very quickly.
Awesome. Excellent. Excellent. So yeah, no, Kim, you've got another interesting, because you don't actually deal with live subjects. Everybody's pretty much sitting still. So
Yep.
do you tend to be more macro in that situation, or are you looking for something with a little bit more wide angle?
You know, I have every bodice lens, and I use all of them. The 25 probably stays on my camera most often if I'm doing a flat lay. Just because it's just, you know, when I first started flat lays, I only had an 85. That was as wide as I went because I had always been a portrait photographer. And it was ridiculous with me on top of a table with my, you know, like trying to get high enough to get my full flat lay. And so I had gotten a 25 actually to do some video work. And so started shooting flat lays with it and fell in love with that focal length. And so primarily I shoot with the 25. But then I also do, if I use the 18 when I really want to get a full table. Because again, so I don't have to stand up on things with the 25. I use the 85 and the 135 kind of interchangeably, depending on how much space I have. I like them for what I would call like a severe angle. Sometimes a flat lay, sometimes I want to come in with a 3/4 angle and just get a really pretty kind of down the table shot. And depending how tight my space is, sometimes I use the 135 all the time, just because I often have a bunch of stuff on my table already. And so just to really kind of narrow that focus, because I don't want to show that much, I'll use a 135. And the 85 I also use for that purpose. But sometimes I like to get a severe angle where it's not quite a lay flat, but it's not a 3/4. It's kind of like I don't know what you'd call that angle, like a 70-degree angle coming in. And I'll use a longer focal length for that kind of shot. But I use the 40 when I do want to get a macro kind of tight shot, just because I love the close focus on that. And with a lot of things I'm really drawn to are the texture of foods or the texture of something, and so that 40 really lets me really enhance that texture and really get in there and see it. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I think that I covered most of that. Quick question from the chat is, what is everyone's favorite editing software? And I think I'm probably going to take that a little bit broader. Do you tend to find yourself working in camera, straight out of the lens for or do you actually lean towards more editing in your final image?
And we were all so different on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know for me, I tend to go more in camera, and I try to edit very little. I mean, I use Lightroom, or now I'm transitioning to Capture One to catalog my images, and I do my final editing in Photoshop. But as much as I can do in camera, I even crop in camera. I try to. I don't want to sit in front of my computer long hours after the day is done. So I try to do as much in camera as possible.
Yeah, I try to do as much in camera. I try to fix as many things or clean up as many things as possible in camera. And then I edit in Lightroom, and I do a lot of batch editing. I hardly ever go into Photoshop when I edit. I do some basic contrast enhancement and some white balance enhancement if I need to, but that's about it.
Awesome.
I'm pretty fast.
Awesome.
Yeah, for me, I like shooting, getting the perfect image, because I do share a lot of my unedited images online, so that way people can actually see what the what the lenses themselves are actually, why I choose to use the lenses that I do. What does that look like straight out of the camera? For me, editing is just for getting my creative style. It's never to fix a photo. And that's sometimes the thing that I think a lot of photographers make the mistake on, in using photo editing tools to fix or correct something that should have been done in camera. So where I like to get my shots perfect in the camera, I do love using Adobe Lightroom, and I'll sometimes use Adobe Photoshop, but it's just for the creativity and having my style be applied to the image, not for correcting anything that may be wrong with the photo, as I like the way that they come out of the camera as is.
Awesome. Greg, I was thinking as we're talking about that, your workflow, it's got to be pretty quick, moving from the stage to prints, either for or images for social media or to share with the artist. Do you find yourself working mostly in the camera, or is there some edit time that you utilize after the fact?
My workflow is so fast that sometimes I tweet from stage in between two songs.
Awesome.
While the concert's going on.
That's awesome.
Okay, it's literally like, shoot the photo. Oh, that was an amazing moment. Everybody's got to see that. Duck behind the drum riser, send it to the phone, crop it, send it to management. Management approves it, and and a million people see it minutes after that. So, or if I have the time, I'll take the time. But yeah, everything. I'm capturing moments that are pretty spectacular and amazing. So as long as I've got the lighting correct and I'm pushing the button at the right time and I have my focus exactly where I want it to be, then there isn't anything to do after that. I mean, that's you're one of the cool things about my job, what I do is I'm taking pictures of incredible things at all times. I don't have to make any of that happen from scratch. I don't have to set up incredible lighting or make a cool background or whatever. So that's a luxury I take advantage of. Now, afterwards, I will fix things if I need to. Again, with Pitbull, he's got 8 dancers on stage with him. So you get that great frame where everybody looks good. But maybe you've got hair stuck to lipstick or, okay, yeah, I'm going to fix that. I'm not going to leave that there. And I'm not going to throw a picture away if it's something I can fix in 5 minutes. But every picture does have to be like everybody's got to look great. You can't have somebody's hand in front of somebody else's face or anything else. So that's the challenge, is getting the picture in the first place.
Awesome. Awesome. No, I think that there's a big movement on, and I can speak to it from the cinematography side of the house as well. There's a big movement on now to move more towards in-camera image capture rather than doing it in post. And it's nice to hear that everybody has their own style for how they get there. Be it because of the speed at which you need to work, or the image, the equipment that's being used now is just that much more accurate, that much more adaptable to work within one piece of equipment. That's excellent. I wanted to ask, how are you guys during this tough time that we have now? How are you guys keeping creative? So that because ultimately we'll be able to exit our caves one more time. But how are you guys keeping active, keeping your minds focused on your art and creativity?
I'm fortunate that oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Greg.
You got the green square.
It's back on you. I'm really now both of us, we don't know what to say. I've been keeping in touch with my models and my muses, and trying to we're just keeping the conversation alive. We're trying to do mood boards. We're talking about what we want to do. I had a client reach out to me today and ask me about a whole concept she thinks is going to be an avant-garde concept, and I'm all ears. So we're going to develop that, and just trying to keep the imagination alive as much as possible. It's tough being alone in my room. Greg, you're up.
I actually feel like a little bit of a slacker compared to what I've seen people doing online. There was one guy that ran a marathon in his backyard in a circle for charity. There are photographers that are doing portraits like over FaceTime, or shooting people through their windows from their cars. And I'm not doing anything like that. But I am fortunate enough that I've got my clients still have things going on that I can be doing from home, pulling things off the hard drives and putting together archived things and whatever. So I've got enough going on that I at least still feel like I have a purpose a little bit going through this. But I know that it's really, really challenging for sure.
Yeah. For myself, I've just been trying to find the beautiful parts of our day and documenting the mundane things that we're doing. Because I think when we look back at this time, it's also part of our story. And I think that story is really important, especially for our kids to look back on. And I've encouraged my kids to also pick up their camera, even my camera, and take pictures too, just because from their eyes, what does this look like and what do they find beautiful? And, I think we can be depressed about our lives right now and we're stuck at home, but there's also so many gifts if we just look for them. And the camera is one of those instruments that helps you see and find all of those things. And I love that the most about photography. And even during this time where I found myself even feeling down, just picking my camera up and finding something beautiful, even though I don't have a client to go photograph and I don't want to drive around and take pictures of people through their windows very badly. So, just daily finding that and just challenging other people to find that too. I made a scavenger hunt for kids to do on our blog. I mean, there's so many free resources right now, but that's just one more thing. Go take pictures and find these things and make something beautiful.
Ken,
Yeah,
how about
for
you?
me, See, I'm already ahead of you, Tony.
Yeah, always one step ahead.
For me, I've kind of been toying with going back to kind of like my beginning of doing some macro things. That seems to have been a really popular thing that a lot of photographers are doing right now. And I wanted to do that because, you know, I actually got a new camera during this pandemic, and I'm like, I can't use it, so I need to find something to do. And so I've taken the Nikon mounted macro lens that I have, and also the bodice close focus, and just went out in the backyard and taking pictures of the flower bed that's back there, and, you know, seeing what I can capture with it. And you know, just trying to really think about other things as far as my kind of ongoing series that I don't really talk about as much as I used to years ago, which is everyday life. And what that is capturing things that we might pass and see every single day, but we might not focus on that because of what we're doing in our lives, you know, going to work, you know, just in our regular routine, you know, kind of slowing things down and actually looking at what's around us to, you know, kind of figure out, you know, what I want to capture and how I want to capture it.
I think for me, it's me. Honestly, I'm doing a lot of the same things I had been doing in the past. So, yeah, it's kind of,
Right. Yeah.
you know, I just kind of keep doing. And, you know, it's interesting. A lot of the things I used to do in the past was, you know, I'd go and I'd say, oh, I'd have a creative idea, and I'd go to the store and get the materials for it. And obviously I can't do that right now. Or I try not to do that right now. So it is more of a creative process of using what I have, and trying not to use it too often, but kind of mixing it up, and just, you know, again, having to kind of just recycle a little bit of the kind of props I have, but use them differently in some way. So that's always exciting. I mean, that's kind of part of the game of shooting still life, is making it always look interesting and beautiful. I've been dyeing fabrics. I've been like going out and foraging for different plants to dye fabrics.
Yeah, I know. My thing is, myself and everybody else in New York State is taken to making bread. I don't think there's any more flour left in the state.
Yeah.
So, but it's fun, you know. And we need to do things to keep ourselves active, and not just mired in worried about you know, the room that we're sitting in. Another question from the chat room, which Tracy's already answered, but I'm going to make her do it on screen anyway. Just a general question: what inspires you, and the style of work that you do? And I want to expand that a little bit to kind of talk about how you got into the not only photography, but the style of photography that you do as your primary focus. We'll start with Greg again. Greg has a fantastic background. I would love to hear a little bit about how you got to where you are now.
Uh,
A long
yeah,
and storied.
No, it is. I don't know how to answer that in a hurry. How I got where I am. I got where I am now because I just have I don't know, because I just want something so badly that I don't care what I have to do to get it. That's in one sentence.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like. How did you when you started in rock? How would you counsel someone to start as a rock photographer, to maybe move from the pit to something more like what you do?
Well, the path that I took there was pretty straightforward. That is easy to explain. What I always tell people, and this is how I started, was just find a band that you like the band, you like good music, you like hanging out with them, and just as importantly, they like you. Take as many pictures as you can of them and really build a body of work about one band. Don't keep trying to go to concerts trying to get one great picture of each singer. No one cares about that, and that's not impressive. I think anybody overall as an artist, it's much more impressive if you have a body of work of one particular thing that stuff in all different directions. And so anyway, I focused on a body of work with one band, showed that to a bigger band. They were impressed with the photos, and that's been been going on like that for over 20 years now. So that's
Awesome.
how that happened.
That's terrific. Thank you. Hey, Ken, I'd known you for a long time now, before you were with ZEISS as an ambassador, and even longer before, a little bit longer before that. I bet you come back from my predecessor's days as well. But what kind of led you towards the style that you have and the type of shooting you do? I'm thinking like the street photography.
Well, my street photography is a lot of people mostly know me for that, but that's actually the the newest genre that I do. Gosh, when it's time to talk is when I can't talk. I've been doing street photography for about 3 to 4 years. Originally, I started as a wedding portrait and landscape photographer back in 2009, and no one really knows this because I don't talk about it. But the photographers that I really loved at that time and whose style that I liked was a photographer who's now retired by the name of Brian Krug. He wasn't a very well-known or popular photographer like you see of many photographers today. But what I really loved about his work was that he could bring something that might be the most basic subject there is, and it just looks so lifelike and so real. But he didn't do a lot of Photoshop or editing to his work. It was just, these really great images that were elegant, very traditional, but had the creativity to where I would know an image of his if I saw it someplace. And so when I started photography, I wanted that to kind of be my signature. I didn't want to have to do a lot to my images, and I wanted what I was capturing to tell the story instead of what I could actually do in Photoshop to tell that story. And so I've always liked to be consistent with my work, even when I first started up until now, where I'm always remastering things and looking to, try new things. But the underlying base of my photos never changes. It's been the same for 11 years. And, I look at some photographers that I've known over within that span that they're not doing photography, or, things didn't go well for them. I'm like, how have I survived all these years, doing photography? My work is pretty much has been consistent, even though I do, like to try different things here and there. But I just always stay true to myself and what I love to do. It doesn't matter if someone doesn't like a picture that I put out there. If I love it, then that that's what means the most to me. And I'm just fortunate that, after all these years, people still love the style of work that I do. And it's something that's recognizable,
Mhm.
especially with my street work. I'm known for kind of going the very strange, weird route of using an 85 millimeter for street photography. That's something most people don't hear of. You hear 35, you hear 50 millimeter lenses. But I always try to be different, but always be consistent in my work. And so that's why I love that traditional style that I still have, where, many other 20 something year old photographers are doing as much as they can to a photo to, put this piece together, put that piece together, where I don't do that. I just always stay true to just being traditional. I let I let my cameras, give me the image that I want
Right.
right there in camera. And whatever I do in post, it just amplifies what's already there. I'm not trying to make something be there that wasn't. And that's what my style is. And, how I just like to stick with that type of philosophy.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Kim, as we're moving around here, what's really how did you get to where you are now? I know that we've talked a little bit about the family, I call it heirloom, but the family portraits that you and Amy do. But you really have a very distinct style in the lay flats. So how did you start to choose that as really where you wanted to put your emphasis?
Um, I honestly I got tired of not photographing people. I really love photographing people, but it was the after, it was the selling photographs to people that got really um it just kind of wears on you, as as we know that we're a luxury. Not everyone can afford us, not everyone, and cameras are becoming so good that, we're surrounded by photographers. There's people who have lots of options on who they can go to. And so I came back from actually a conference, and I was really burnt out. We had just taught a course on video, how to photograph video, how to go from shooting kind of like what Greg does, going from taking pictures to shooting video, more in a family sense. And I was really burnt out. And so I started just photographing things I had around me. And I just enjoyed that creative, quiet process. And I didn't really know that there was, I honestly thought still life and all of that was kind of what old women did when their kids, when they were done with shooting, portraits, they went to go shooting flowers and other still life and, bowls of apples. And so I didn't realize until I started photographing that there's a whole genre about it. It just, I never really got out of my portrait bubble in that way. And so I just enjoyed finding things that I was really drawn to. And typically I pick things that I'm drawn to scenes that have that moody light, that look like they could be real scenes. They could be something that is placed in somewhere and you just kind of happen upon it. And so I love that idea of creating interest with objects, and
Awesome.
and just playing with them, because there isn't, I laugh because the apples I put in the back don't get offended, that I put the pretty one up front. There's no offense to it, and there is no, I can work with it and I can play with it and I can leave it and come back to it at a later time, and it just kind of waits for me. And I needed that kind of that quiet creativity where all of the voices from, when you're photographing people, you're concerned about how they feel and you're
Right.
worried about how they think there's a lot of confidence that's and maybe lack of confidence that happens when you're photographing people. A lot of worrying about how that exchange is happening. And so when I'm photographing things, there is all of that noise kinds of goes away, and it's just me, my camera, and these objects. And there's an intersection of light and contrast and color and shape and line, and I just get to kind of maneuver through that. And so it's very peaceful for me.
That sounds fantastic. And really, I like how you say that the quiet artistry that comes out of being able to come to the surface, come to the lay flat like that. Thank you. Tracy, you have kind of an interesting story of how you came towards photography. Do you want to give us a few minutes on that?
I am totally face blind. I have a condition called prosopagnosia. I don't remember a face beyond looking at it. When I look away, it's completely gone. So all of y'all, I won't remember you when I look away. So that kind of led me to capturing faces really close and tight. There's a photographer and painter who's really prominent in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He's still alive. He's still painting. I don't want to make him sound like he's not there. He's amazing. His name is Chuck Close. And he, looking at his work when I was coming up through school, kind of gave me permission to to crop really tight and to be up close and tight to a face. And I didn't realize at the time that I was face blind, because I've never known anything else. And then I found out much later, about 6 years ago, that Chuck is also actually face blind. And I think that that's why I felt this kindred spirit with his work, and why I felt like it gave me permission to be me. And everybody else was telling me to, put more room around the head and let there be some room to grow. I was cropping really closely, and it just happened to lend itself really, really well to the entertainment and editorial portrait world that I found myself in, and it kind of maneuvered from one thing to another. But as I've grown, as I've changed camera systems, learned photography better, used my ZEISS lenses, I have found a real passion for going back and looking at contemporary photographers and really studying their work. Irving, Karsh, Newman, Penn. I'm just more recent, Greg Heisler. I had a chance to meet and work with him a couple of years ago. it's really led me in a different direction. It's made me go from exploring the fine art painted look that I kind of grew up with to really wanting to explore the fine art black and white look, and now look at the complete dynamic range of a photograph and all of the tonal values. And I think it's really changed my work. And I've got the Newman Book Masterclass on my side table right now to read. And I keep perusing, and I keep, Avedon's, the biography in Avedon, Something Personal, with all of the interviews of his models and his clients and the people that hired him, the art directors, everything I take a nugget from all of it, and I keep changing things and exploring. And I think that's been my creative process. It's just to keep pushing forward and exploring, and try to absorb the lessons of the people that have come before me and use it to keep changing and pushing forward and having something different to offer.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, and I love how you've not only taken the challenge of the face blindness, but really capitalized on it to bring it out in your art. That's excellent. Thank you. And then Amy, you have I have to comment on you. You have a style there that kind of drew me to what you and Kim do, but it's really using that last little bit of light in the day. And the light just must be way more different in the part of the country than you are than what I'm seeing here in New York. But tell me about what brought you to your style.
I think I don't know what brought me to my style. Definitely shooting with long lenses and just loving just the dreaminess of it, and sometimes otherworldly, and just the feel of golden hour just is my favorite time of day. And often I'll just see the pretty light coming in the windows, and I'm like, oh, who wants to go take pictures? And my kids run away often, but sometimes they still flatter me and go out if we don't have sessions right now. But it's just an inspiring time of day, and I love capturing it.
Awesome. That's excellent. Yeah, no, I imagine that your kids are probably asking for day rate for model services these days.
Sometimes I brush them with V-Bucks, if you know what V-Bucks are, for Fortnite.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've stooped to that level once in a while.
Well, I bring everybody back to the screen, and I kind of wanted to just open it up to the five of you, to if there's some parting comment or some conversation that you want to have to our audience. If there's something you wanted to bring up that we haven't touched on.
Well, if no one, I like a question that someone asked, and it was be a simple question: how long has everyone been a ZEISS ambassador?
Oh, good one.
Because we have a lot of years in between all of us, where I'm the baby of 8 months now.
I've been an ambassador for 6 years. I was one of the original ones when the program started. But as I mentioned before, I've been using ZEISS lenses for decades. So it's I like to point that out to people. I didn't become an ambassador just because I put a bunch of hashtags on my photos. There's something about those lenses that I've loved for my entire career, and I'd like to think that they have something to do with the overall consistency of my work throughout that time.
Absolutely.
I think I'm about on my 3rd year anniversary in a few weeks.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
2 years, Kim?
I think Amy, about 18 months or so. Under 2 years. Just under 2 years.
Yeah. But ZEISS, definitely the first time I remember shooting with a ZEISS lens was definitely a game changer for my work. I brought the images into Lightroom, and I was like, what? There was a huge difference in the quality and what there really is a ZEISS look, and I don't know how to put that into words totally, but it made a difference in my work and definitely inspired me to keep shooting and sharing and telling people why you should get a ZEISS lens.
I think the biggest game changer, again, this happened before Amy and I became ZEISS ambassadors, was when one of my favorite lenses is the 85, for the fact that I can easily hand hold it to go between video and stills. I can still get that portrait look, but I can hand hold it with really, I think, pretty low shutter speeds when I'm shooting stills. And then for video, I can go without having any kind of stabilization. Because in our world with family photography, there is definitely a tug between stability and mobility. We want to be able to move around, but we still want to be stable in our video. And when we put the 85 on, we have the Sony A9, the image stabilization in that lens with image stabilization in the camera, I mean, it truly, Amy and I do sessions together, and she would shoot the stills with like a 200. And this is our pre-ZEISS, and I would shoot video with like a 50, and she would have this beautiful vignette, and I would have like power lines and have all sorts of other crazy things in my scene, just because of our focal lengths. And so when we started shooting with the ZEISS lens, she would usually have the 135 on, I would have the 85 on. And we could both get pretty much the same look. So our stills and our video were matching, and we could easily move around. I mean, it was probably the biggest game changer to be able to capture both.
Yeah.
So we've been thrilled with ZEISS for a really long time.
Well, thank you. And thank you to everybody on screen today. I appreciate all of you being here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We've been talking for about 45 minutes. Thank you to everybody on the team, all of my ZEISS ambassadors. I appreciate you giving us the time. And thank you to everybody in the chat today. We'll repost this, and I'll also add links to some more information for each of the ambassadors, so you can go find them at their websites or on Instagram, so you can follow them and really get a good sense of why they shoot the way they do. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us this afternoon. We had a great first show, and we hope to do this again soon. Thanks everybody, and goodbye.
Bye.